right, stay standing until you feel like you are not able to answer my questions. All right. And if this helps to alleviate or add any pressure to whether or not you think you should remain standing, I may or may not call on you. Okay? So if you're not comfortable answering a question in public, then you might want to sit down. But remain standing until you feel like you cannot answer a question. Question number 1. Could you tell me what it means to lie? Good. How about steal? Feel like you could define stealing? Okay. How about committing adultery? Murder? That's easy. Yeah, okay, good. So good. We feel like we know what these things are and how to define them. Good. Okay, tell me this. Can you tell me what it means to be greedy? You all think you could define greedy. Can you tell me when you cross the line in you yourself? Can you tell me when you personally cross the line into being greedy? And there they go. Go ahead, you can sit down. With many of the vices that can easily start to take root in our hearts, it can be easy to define. Like, most of us know when we're lying. Most people wouldn't be surprised to realize they're committing adultery. Like, oh, wait, you're not my spouse? What? Like, most people get that. But when you cross the line into being greedy, that's hard to define, isn't it? It's hard to nail that down. Randy Alcorn says that 15% of Jesus' recorded teachings were on money. 15%. He taught more on money than heaven and hell combined. Tim Keller says that Jesus taught more on greed than he did on sex, and yet almost nobody thinks they are guilty of being greedy. This morning, if you haven't figured this out, we're going to be talking about money, and we're going to, as we continue our series in kingdom building, we're going to be talking about how we can give our money towards building God's kingdom in us and through us. But I think that it would be wise for us all to admit right off the beginning, if we're not even sure when our hearts cross the line from being generous to being greedy, from being frugal to being greedy, maybe this is something that we should be willing to consider. I might not have a handle on. I might need some teaching on this. I might need God to speak to my heart so that I can understand where my money is going in terms of worship. So with that, let me pray. And we'll dig into God's word together. Father in heaven, thank you. Thank you, God, that you are so good to us, that you want no aspect of our lives to not be infiltrated by your glory, to not be filled with worship. God, I pray this morning, Holy Spirit, by the power of the name of Jesus and through your eternal word, I pray, God, that you would open up your word to us. And through that, God, open up our hearts to you that we might be liberated to worship you in all things. We pray for this all in Jesus' name. Amen. Several books have influenced me personally in regards to this message in particular, but have also influenced this message in my study this week. So I'll just give you 4 titles. If you want more reading, you can check out these. We'll see maybe you can write these down, and then after the message, you can decide whether or not you want to follow up on this. 4 books, 2 authors, Tim Keller and Randy Alcorn. Tim Keller wrote 2 books that have been immensely helpful for me in regards to this. One of them is Generous Justice, and the other is Counterfeit Gods. Generous Justice and Counterfeit Gods, both by Tim Keller. 2 other books that you may find helpful are written by Randy Alcorn. One of them is really long, Money, Possessions, and Eternity, I believe is the title. And the other one is a lot shorter, and I mean, it is worth every penny. The Treasure Principle by Randy Alcorn. So those 4 books have heavily influenced my perspective on this and certainly this message. But this morning we're going to be looking at Exodus, the book of Exodus in particular, chapter 36, and I'm going to be starting in verse 3. And they received from Moses all the contribution that the people of Israel had brought for doing the work on the sanctuary. They still kept bringing him free will offerings every morning, so that all the craftsmen who were doing every sort of task on the sanctuary came, each from the task that he was doing, and said to Moses, "The people bring much more than enough for doing the work that the Lord has commanded us to do." So Moses gave command, and word was proclaimed throughout the camp. Word was proclaimed throughout the camp. Let no man or woman do anything more for the contribution of the sanctuary. So the people were restrained from bringing, for the material they had was sufficient for all the work and more. The story takes place in the period of Israel's history between their exodus from Egypt and their entering the promised land. These verses describe the people's response to being given the opportunity to build a tabernacle, to build a sanctuary where God would make his presence tangibly, physically, powerfully known just outside of their camp. This was an amazing opportunity. Israel was to build this tabernacle, place it outside the camp, and whenever Moses was going to go to meet with God, the presence of God would fill the sanctuary. Check out what they were giving toward. Exodus chapter 40, verse 34. Then the cloud covered the tent of meeting. The glory of the Lord filled the tabernacle. And Moses was not able to enter the tent of meeting because the cloud had settled on it and the glory of the Lord filled the tabernacle. The people were able to give toward this. They were able to give their resources, their time, their effort, their energy, their money. They were able to give to build this sanctuary, to build this tabernacle, so that God would make his name known in such power that Moses was not even able to enter into the space to meet with God. If this vision doesn't make your heart race, you don't understand how beautiful God is. Can you imagine seeing God move in such power, so close to you that you couldn't even approach it? That's what their giving produced. That was the vision these people were giving toward giving towards God, making his presence powerfully known. But what was happening here wasn't just so amazing because of God's presence. It's amplified because of the people's problems. If you haven't read the book of Exodus in a while, you may not remember that this wasn't actually the first time the people were told to give toward building the tabernacle. So it was the second time. And the first time they were asked to give towards building the tabernacle, they weren't so thrilled about it. The Israelites grew impatient with God. They felt like God gave them these commands, told them to do these things, and then Moses went up on the mountain to meet with God. And when Moses was up on the mountain receiving the 10 commandments and several other different laws to govern their community, the people grew impatient. They had this hope for this vision. They wanted to see God do this stuff, but then Moses went away to meet with God, and they felt like God took too long. God didn't give them what they want when they wanted it. Their Creator took too long. Their hearts craved worship, and so they created a different God. Exodus 32. When the people saw that Moses was delayed in coming down from the mountain, the people gathered themselves together to Aaron and said to him, "Up, make gods who shall go before us. As for this Moses, the man who brought us up out of the land of Egypt, we do not know what has become of him." So Aaron said to them, "Take off the gold rings that are in the ears of your wives and your sons and your daughters and bring them to me." So the people took off the gold, their rings of gold that were in their ears, and brought them to Aaron. You may remember how the rest of the story unfolds. Aaron takes all of this gold, throws it into a fire, melts it, and shapes it into a golden calf, right? Remember the story of the golden calf? That's what's going on here. God took too long. The people wanted something else. And so they made a god that could go before them. That is, they made a god that they could tangibly control almost. They wanted a god that could go before them, a God that they thought they could count on to protect them, to provide for them, to lead them. Now, I think that most people misunderstand how the Bible describes worship. Most people, when they think about what it means to worship, probably think of something like singing songs like we just did here. Like that's worship, and it is. But worship is broader than that. I think the other way people tend to conceptualize worship is to consider like a bunch of teenage girls screaming at Justin Bieber or something, like worshiping him. Like I think that these tend to be our two ideas of what worship means. Like either you obsess over something or you sing songs. But how the Bible describes worship is so much deeper and broader than that. I would submit that the Bible would give a definition of worship as whatever we look to find our identity in. The Bible would say that we worship what we are looking for security, for meaning, for purpose in life. And that in a way that's almost instinctive, like reflexive. It's like it kind of controls us. And that's why the Israelites wanted a different God. They couldn't control the true God. He gave them these great promises. He gave them infinite purpose, but he took too long. He wanted them to worship and serve him in a way that they weren't so comfortable with. And so they created a different God. They wanted a God that they could count on to go before them, a God they could count on to protect them and provide for them. And when they had this God, when they were trying to create this God, they poured out their money to worship this God. And you do the same thing. And so do I. It's how God wired us. We don't have a choice in this. See, this is why Jesus said that where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. When Jesus said that famous line in the Sermon on the Mount, he didn't just crack open a fortune cookie or something and say, ooh, that's clever. And that's 7 words. Awesome. That's not what's going on here. Your heart needs to worship. You cannot not worship. We are created beings. We are dependent for life outside of ourselves. And so we need to find our identity, our meaning, our purpose, our security, our comfort. We need to find all of these things in something outside of ourselves. And we worship whatever we think is going to most extravagantly, consistently provide these things for us, and we pour out our money after them. When Jesus said, where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. This is the creator of the human heart telling us how our hearts work. Where you put your money, your love follows. What you spend your money on dictates what you worship. It reveals what you worship. We will pay the gods to go before us, whatever gods those may be. That's where we use our money. For example, my grandparents lived through the Great Depression. Because of that, they worshiped security. I remember they had a room in their basement that was just chock full of canned goods, just in case another Great Depression hit. I don't think that at my grandparents' house, I ever used a bottle of ketchup. You want to know why? Because they had a cupboard filled with ketchup packets from McDonald's. Because they were looking to save every penny possible. The gifts that we got at Christmas were recycled gifts of things that they would find around their house. And we can talk more about whether or not we should give gifts that way. But there was one year that I got a pack of gum, like you know how you can get a pack of gum that has like 6 packs in it or whatever? Mine had 5, and it was stapled closed at the top. They worship security. And because of that, they saved as much money as they possibly could. Sounds silly, right? Especially if you worship comfort. Because some of us can't imagine not being able to just have these little things that we want whenever we want them. I have known people who will, without blinking, without even considering the facts, they won't even cross their minds. They'll say, of course, I can't afford to sponsor a child with Compassion International. There's no way that I could give $40 a month to feed my starving children. I could not possibly put any more money toward poverty relief. I couldn't do it. Of course, those same people will say that without even considering that they dropped $40 at Starbucks a month without even considering whether or not they should. Why? They worship comfort. Can't possibly imagine not having comfort, and they give their money towards comfort. They pour out their money at the feet of that God. And how about you? Where does your money go? What do you believe your money is for? What comforts are you willing to go without in order to feel secure? What security are you willing to go without in order to feel comfortable? See, money is just that. It's just money. That's all it is. It's just money. All money does, all it does, is it shows you what you worship. That's what it does. Where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. What does your checkbook reveal about the gods you are counting on to go before you? There's much debate today about whether or not Christians should give 10%, what they should give it all, where they should give their money, and to what. Like, does 10% need to go to your local church? Does anything need to go to your local church? Should you be giving towards poverty relief, disaster relief, missions, vet clinics? Like, what should you be giving your money toward? Anything, whatever you want, how much, whatever. Many will say that Christians aren't required to give 10% as the Old Covenant law dictated. They will say that a tithe overly simplifies the complexity of the laws that were governing Israel. It's in particular how Israel was supposed to give their money. It's partly accurate. The law was given to Israel as a sovereign nation. And so part of what they were supposed to give had to basically be considered like taxes almost. They had bills to pay. But before we think that lets us off the hook from giving, let's consider how that worked for them. I'm following Keller's research here in the book Generous Justice. First, the Israelites weren't just required to give. Every 7 years, they were required to forgive all of the debts owed to them. All of them. Every 7 years, they had to forgive all of the debts owed to them. So if you borrowed money to somebody, like a bank, say, all debts had to be forgiven every 7 years. Any remaining debt had to be absorbed by the lender. Any collateral put up for the debt had to be returned, and that was usually land. Every 7 years, debt was forgiven. Beyond this, God required the people, the business owners, to intentionally leave profits on the table. See this in Leviticus 22. They had to leave crops in the field. They had to leave some of the profits on the table so that the poor, the widow, the foreigner, the alien, the orphan could go and glean the fields and have an opportunity to make some money of their own and have some sustenance. They had to leave money on the table. Further, every third year, they were required to give an extra 10%. So every third year, the nation of Israel had to give 20%. That extra 10% was specifically set aside for the poor, for the orphan, for the widow. So, did Israel have to give 10%? Is that too simplified? And I'm just scratching the surface, church. Yeah. They didn't just have to give 10%, they had to give a lot more. Now, some people are going to hear this and say, well, got it. Yep, they had to give more. Get that. But you know what? They were under the law. They weren't under grace. We're under grace. This doesn't apply to us anymore. I have yet to have a conversation with somebody who uses that argument in the right way. See, because every time somebody says, we're not under the law, we're under grace, they use that not as a motivation to give more, it's always an excuse to give less. And that sucks. That sucks. Like, that sucks for you. If that's your argument, don't. Like, that's bad for your heart. It's bad for your soul. Think about this. Do you really think that the God who has saved you, redeemed you, sent his Holy Spirit to live inside of you would desire less from you than from people living under the law? Do you really think that God would require less of you, American Christian, living in the most prosperous culture in the history of the world? Do you think God requires less of you than he did from the poorest peasant in Israel in the ancient world? Really? You really think God wants less? Look, if you find yourself resisting me right now, do you know what's going on in your heart? There's a golden calf clamoring for your heart's affections. Because if you resist the idea of being able to put your money toward the glory of God, then there's another God that's fighting for glory in your heart. There's something else that you are counting on for protection and provision. There's something else that you think is going to be able to give you more comfort than God. There's something that you think is going to be able to provide for you more than God. There's something that's going to make you feel more secure than God. See, in Exodus 36, the Israelites needed to have their giving restrained. They had to have their giving restrained. Why? Because when you read the narrative between chapters 32 and 36, you will see the glory of God eclipse their guilt. These people, like us, they turned their hearts back on God. They turned their lives away from the author and giver of life. They walked away from him, but he pursued them. In the midst of their unfaithfulness, God showered them with his unrelenting faithfulness. He could have wiped them all out then and there, but he didn't. He didn't. He spared them. He sustained them. He showered his glory on them, receiving this grace, understanding that God continued to pursue them, continued to reach out to them, continued to carry them, continued to go before them. Reflecting on this, filled their hearts with an irrepressible joy. And then, when they understood the glory of God, the forgiveness and kindness and mercy of God, and that in him, all of their lives were tied up, and that he is the one who can provide. And he continues to do that, not only for them, but in spite of them. Reflecting on this caused their hearts to overflow with joy and gratitude to the point where they poured out their money. They poured it out to the extent that it had to be restrained. And in these verses, you'll see that this made the people crazy happy. Crazy happy. And I know we've talked about this before, but I'll just say it again because it's so right on. Have you ever known a stingy person who's actually happy? Have you ever known a generous person who's consistently unhappy? When these people were giving to God, it liberated them. It set them free. They were able to pour out their treasures where they wanted their hearts to be. And the joy had to be contagious, because this says that they gave to Moses every morning, right? That's what it said, that they gave to Moses every morning. Now, you know, not everybody's a morning person. And they were camping. Like they slept in tents. Now you have to know that some people in the camp are thinking, oh, you freaking morning people, go back to bed. Moses doesn't need this right now. Can't we just wait till like 10? Do we really have to be clanging and finding all of our stuff and jingling our coins? Can't we just wait till this afternoon? No, they couldn't wait. They couldn't wait. They had to go. And you know that some people, not everybody had to be there right away. And if you're skeptical right now, you might be feeling this too. You might be thinking, well, I'm not sure I want to give or not. Give me a minute here. Let me see what happens. And you had to know there were people in the Israel's camp that was saying the same thing. But as they watched people give, they saw that their joy was authentic. Their generosity was liberating. By giving their treasure to where they wanted their hearts to be, the people had their hearts realigned with the author and giver of life. They had their hearts realigned with the heart of God. And that produced a joy in them that was contagious. It produced a generosity in them that was uncontainable and needed to be restrained. And as amazing as the grace that God gave the Israelites sitting at the base of Mount Sinai, as amazing as this grace was for them, what he's given us is even greater. It's even greater. Even though God clearly demonstrated that he would remain faithful to his promises, Israel was still kept at a distance from God. They gave toward the sanctuary, they gave toward the tabernacle. Then the tabernacle had to be built and set up outside the camp. And the only people that could go into the tabernacle were Moses and the priests. But when we look at the cross, we see that God is not keeping us at arm's length. That in Jesus, we see that God came to us. Jesus carried the cross outside the camp. He climbed Golgotha outside the city. He went outside the camp carrying our cross. And when he hung on the cross bearing the penalty for our sin, God the Father did not go before him. God the Father did not protect him. God forsook him. Like we said, my God, why have you forsaken me? Jesus went outside the camp. God, forsaken by God, so that God could come near to us and that we would never be forsaken. And now when we all embrace the gospel together, when we embrace this truth together, then God's glory will shine like a light from our hearts. Like we saw last week, through the Spirit of God dwelling in us and among us, he's making us to be the tabernacle, so that the presence and power of God could be spread forth throughout this city, throughout this neighborhood, so that this neighborhood would know that God is here. He is with us. Reflecting on this grace, applying the gospel, is how money can lose its death grip on your soul. You can be liberated to worship God with every breath and every penny. You can be liberated. You can be set free to have your heart aligned with the heart of God. You can put your treasure where you want your heart to be. You don't have to strive to control your life with your capital. God is in control. And he who would not withhold his own son for you will not withhold any good thing from you. God gave up heaven's greatest treasure to make you his treasure. You don't have to chuck your change at the approval of people. Through the gospel, Jesus has earned your eternal approval before God. It's fully yours in Christ today. Who else's approval do you need? It doesn't matter what kind of shoes you wear. God loves you. You don't have to waste your wallet on comfort. What could possibly be more comforting than knowing that God has covered your sin? You are eternally accepted by God. And he is preparing eternal comfort for you right now. You don't have to be buried by guilt if you've messed up. If you've messed up financially, you don't have to be buried by the guilt of that, because Jesus has already been buried by your guilt. It is not too late to start moving in the right direction. You can do it today. Your sin has been forgiven. You can use the money God has entrusted to you to worship him, to have him build his kingdom in your heart, so that through your resources, your time, your talents, your treasures, you can invest in building the kingdom of God here. Do you want a heart that beats with the white hot passion for the glory of God? Do you want a heart that beats to see God's name magnified in your life? Then give your treasure. Give to where you want your heart to be. You can demonstrate to yourself and to a watching world that you are so satisfied in the love of God that you can give it away. You trust him. God is at work here. Don't waste your money on a golden calf that can't provide, that can't protect you. God is at work. He is going before us, and he is at work in this place, giving us an amazing opportunity right here and right now. One of the most challenging steps that a church plant can have to take is adjusting where it meets for corporate worship. Many church plants have died when they've needed to change locations. And God is giving us an opportunity to move into a long-term home right across the street. We're not going to have to adjust our ministry philosophy. We're not going to have to shift our ministry partners. We are going to be able to continue to carry out the vision that God has given us in a long-term home by just meeting right across the street. This is an unheard of, extravagant gift in the church planting world. Many of the pastors that I've talked to about what God has done here by giving us an opportunity to purchase the Pilgrim Church building have said that they believe that this is just miraculous divine intervention. That God is giving us an unheard of gift that most church plants would never even be able to dream of asking for. God is giving us a remarkable opportunity, especially when you consider the dollars that are going to need to go through this project. We're able to buy that building. We haven't closed yet. We're working in that direction. The purchase price was $135,000 for an entire church building in the city with a parking lot. That's cheaper than a house, many houses. And the total we're borrowing with all of the rehab is going to be up to around $225 is what we're working with. Now, when people have heard that God is going before us in this, when they've seen what God is doing, there are several generous people who have put their treasure toward this project. One donor from outside of ID heard about what God is doing in this place, was convinced that God has gone before us, he is here. One donor has put up $25,000 in a matching gift. When one of the people from inside of our church heard about that matching gift and has seen what God is doing in this place, they said, you know what, I'll put up $10,000 in a matching gift against that $25,000. And I have to tell you, talking with these people has been so fantastic. It's like it's been Christmas time for them when they get to consider giving. Money that could have gone in other directions. They know it's going to eternal benefit. They've been giddy like little kids getting Christmas presents, where they've been able to consider giving these extravagant amounts. So here's what this means. Every penny that you give up to $10,000 is going to be quadrupled. Because as we give to that $10,000, it'll become 20, then that 20 is going to be put against the 25, that'll turn into 40. So every penny you give up to $10,000 is going to be quadrupled. And then every penny of the next $5,000 after that is going to be doubled. Now, if you want your money to go, if you want your money to be multiplied like this, you're going to have to get in on this soon. Because as I stand here today, we've already been given over $7,000 towards the $10,000 matching gift. God's doing something here. You can put your treasure where you want your heart to be. This is amazing. Now, I know you may not be able to give today. You might need to take some time to think about this. Just tell you what Christy and I have done. We've just given our tax return. You might need to wait till you figure out what your tax return is. But when you know what that is, you can resolve to give, and you can resolve to give today. You can put your treasure where you want your heart to be. Now, as we prayerfully consider the example that God has given us in his word and what he may lead us to give, you can get the details in your bulletin. I think that there's a card in there. You can just fill that out. And I'm telling you, if God is moving in your heart, fill it out today. You might need to move some resources. We'll be collecting this stuff for the next year. But man, if you hear the voice of God, do not harden your heart. Don't harden your heart. Respond to what God is doing in your life. As we consider this, we would do well to follow Randy Alcorn's advice when he says we should set our eyes on eternity as we consider what we're going to give. He writes this: 5 minutes after you die, you will know exactly how you should have lived. 5 minutes after you die, you will know exactly how you should have lived. Thankfully, God has given us his word so that we don't have to wait to die to find out. And he's given us his spirit to empower us to live that way now. And so ask yourself, 5 minutes after I die, what will I wish I would have trusted in? 5 minutes after I die, what God do I wish I would have put my faith in to go before me? 5 minutes after I die, how do I wish I would have invested all of my life, including my money? When you can answer that question, why not resolve to live that way starting now? Let me pray. God, you're good, and we're desperate for you. We need you. Our hearts cannot help but worship. We've been created. We rely on you to give us our breath. We rely on something outside of us to make us feel secure, to make us feel like we have purpose and meaning. So God, I pray, align our hearts with yours. Let us worship you, the author and giver of life, the only one who can actually protect us, the one who can protect us even from your wrath, as you died for us to shield us from eternal suffering. God, your grace is big enough to make up for all of our mistakes. God, I pray, use your word, use this moment, use this moment in time right now to shake us free, that we could be a generous church. That when the stats go out that say most American Christians only give 2% of their money, they would have to put an asterisk by that to say, but there's one. There's one church that is on fire with love for you. God, let us put our treasure where your heart is, so that our hearts could be aligned with yours. Oh God, do something amazing in this place. Let us contribute. Let us contribute to your work. May we be able to tell a story like Moses, where we had to restrain people's giving because the hearts of your people were so aligned with your heart that we just wanted to give whatever we could to be close to you, God. Open up our hearts to worship you now. We pray for this in Jesus' name.